Could I ask everyone to just take their seats, please? Okay. I think everybody's about ready to begin. We'll get going. Great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this year's Spring into Clinical Trials event. Mani Nagru Tampandi, Nagru Ghana, Yatangarim Parendi, Ghana Miona, Yangcha Matanya. Those words that I've just spoken were taught to me by Jack Buckskin, and essentially they mean it's great that we all do an acknowledgement that we meet on Ghana land, and this land does belong to the Ghana peoples. And I'd also like to pay my respects to those Aboriginal and/or Torres Strait Islander people from other nations with us today, either in the room or joining us online. So my name's Tom Simons. I'm the fairly newly minted Exec Director for the great team that is Health Translation SA, and it's certainly my great privilege to be your host for the afternoon here at SAHMRI, and again welcoming the many of you that I know that are joining online. Welcome. It's wonderful that so many are here, have joined in person or online, and just listening to the chats and the buzz that was in the place, I certainly think that all speaks volumes to everybody's passion and shared commitment to advancing clinical trials across South Australia. Hopefully by the end of today's session, you'll leave with some new insights, some strengthened connections, a bit of a renewed sense of purpose, dare I say, a bit of a spring in your step. Okay, I won't say that one again. In driving forward clinical trial infrastructure, data sharing, and a lot around innovation and clinical trials. Ultimately, this afternoon, though, is about collaboration, which is certainly why HDSA, as your accredited health medical research translation centre, is delighted to host the event, as our key purpose is to bring people together from the key parts of the health care, research and innovation ecosystem to work together to really tackle some of the big problems and make the greatest difference to healthcare and health and well-being of all our communities across South Australia. So we do have a busy programme today, so I'm going to try and keep it on time as best as possible. So a bit of a warning to the speakers. I'll be showing a little 2-minute finishing piece of paper, so just keep an eye out for that, because we do want to make sure we have everybody has fair time on the schedule. Just a spot of housekeeping, particularly for those that are in this room here at SAHMRI. Hopefully you know that the toilets are at the foyer. If there is a reason that we need to evacuate in any sort of emergency, the assembly point is just outside at the front of the Royal Adelaide Hospital. Just let you know, we may take a few photos of the audience during the afternoon. If anybody prefer not to have their photo taken, or certainly not to have it reproduced anywhere, just let one of the staff know, and we'll make sure that your wishes are taken into account. And hopefully also everybody online and here will get a copy of some of the video presentations that we're going to be running today. It is tight, the schedule, but we will have, as you know, a couple of times for Q&A, particularly for the two keynote speakers. So we'll obviously have mics in the room. There will be, for those online, we can use the Zoom chat function if you have questions for those. We're also keen that, even though we might not have time to deal with questions about all our presentations, if there are questions that you have from any of the presentations, we will capture those and respond to them. If time allows, we might cover a few today. If not, we will certainly get back to you, and we will publish the questions and responses from the teams that are presenting. But it is a tight timeline, so we may not have a lot of time for those other questions, but really keen to get feedback and your commentary. Okay, so I will move on, and it is now my pleasure to welcome and introduce our first keynote speaker, Dr. Michael Osborne, who is the Interim Chief Cancer Officer of the newly established South Australian Comprehensive Cancer Network, which he is here to tell us all about. And Michael previously chaired the former Cancer Statewide Clinical Network and is the lead clinician of the statewide youth cancer service at the Royal Adelaide Hospital, and is a paediatric haematologist and oncologist at the Women's and Kids. Michael holds a number of national committee roles within such groups as Clinical Oncology Society of South Australia, the Youth Cancer Service, and Cancer Australia. And he's an associate professor at the University of Adelaide, where his main clinical research interests are leukemia in children, adolescents, and young adults, exercise in cancer, and improving healthcare delivery for people with cancer. So welcome, Michael. We'll look forward to hearing your talk. Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's really lovely to be at your meeting here today to talk to you a bit about SACAN, and in particular to discuss some of our thinking around how we can all be working together to advance cancer clinical trials in South Australia. So just to start, I'd just like to echo Tom's words with his welcome to country. And look, I think it's really salient that we are reminded of this today, particularly given that First Nations Australians continue to experience worse outcomes for cancer and lower rates of clinical trial accruals. And certainly SACAN is very much looking forward to collaborating and co-designing a number of initiatives with Aboriginal people to try and improve those statistics. So everyone in the room here today would be well aware of the fact that Australia has considerable morbidity and mortality from cancer. And given the number of people who are likely to get cancer in their life, that being 1 in 4 women and 1 in 3 men, almost every Australian will be fairly directly touched by cancer at some point in their life. But having said that, I think that all of us here have got reasons to feel proud in that if we look at the graph in the bottom right corner of my slide there, we can see that over the last few decades, the 5-year survival, so in many cases essentially cure from cancer, has risen from just above 50% to now 71%. So that's really been a remarkable improvement over many of our working lives. I think we can all feel quite proud for how we've contributed to that. Although I think, having said that, all of us know that there's some things that we probably could and should be doing better. And indeed, when we did our consultation for the South Australian Cancer Plan, we spoke to a number of people in the workforce and also in the community and heard directly from those people where they thought that we should be looking to try and improve with regards to cancer care in South Australia. For instance, we heard that there really needs to be a focus on improving the overall cancer experience. So this is things like ensuring that there's better cancer navigation within our often fragmented healthcare system. It includes things like looking at patient-reported measures and then acting on those to try and improve the overall cancer experience for people going through this really difficult time. We also heard that we need to be maximising prevention and early detection. It's obvious that anyone who's ever had cancer would tell you they would really rather that they didn't have it, and if it had been prevented, then that would have been better. And on the early detection front, it's so great to, just in the last month or so, to see the rollout of the National Lung Cancer Screening Program, which will hopefully detect lung cancers at an earlier stage so that they can then be treated more effectively, and hopefully we'll see less mortality from what's currently Australia's #1 cancer killer, that being lung cancer. We also heard that we need to be looking at the health system and trying to enable that for optimal care. So this is things like looking at the data that we're currently collecting and trying to analyse that and learn from that. I mean, given that we live in a time where our watches probably can tell more about our performance status than the person doing an ECOG or a Karnofsky score, and given that we live in a time where the Google metrics are probably better at picking up whether we're depressed than, say, what our GP can do, I think that consumers will be increasingly expecting us to be utilising current technology and using that to optimise their care. So I think we clearly need to be moving forward in that regard. Another thing that we heard was the importance of research and clinical trials, and obviously everyone in this room today would agree that these are the things which provide strong and dynamic foundations for the cancer care, noting that it's this research and clinical trials that's largely been responsible for that improvement in cancer outcomes that we highlighted on the first slide. We also heard from many people that we need to be focusing on achieving equity for people who are currently disadvantaged, whether that be people from the regions, whether it be the very elderly, adolescents, and obviously our First Nations people are a group that we particularly need to be addressing inequities for. So putting all of this together, we came up with the cancer plan with a number of targeted outcomes, those being to reduce the risk of preventable cancers for South Australian residents, achieving equitable access to cancer care, obviously improving the survival for people with cancer, but also measuring the improvement in experience, in that it's all well and good to come out with these motherhood statements, but if we're not actually measuring that, how can we actually prove that we have been achieving what we set out to do? So, how are we going to do all of that? And look, I think the first thing to say is that the cancer plan is something which I hope that everybody in the sector is going to be able to contribute to. Obviously, the LHNs will have their roles, various NGOs will have their roles, but we also need to have some kind of central body. And this is really where the South Australian Comprehensive Cancer Network comes in. So let's review a little bit of the history. So back in 2022, Tim Price and a number of other people from within health successfully lobbied the federal government to commit $77 million over a 4-year period to establish a comprehensive cancer centre in South Australia. And the Hospital Research Foundation Group very kindly upped that with an additional $10 million. Now, the initial concept was to develop the Bragg Comprehensive Cancer Centre, that being a particular place where the leading cancer researchers, clinicians and everybody else all came together to deliver wonderful cancer care. And they came up with a number of important guidelines, which are in the very small print over there. As this concept developed, a few things became apparent. And one of those was that it would probably be much wiser use of the money to, instead of building a particular place where all the wonderful cancer care happened, to instead use that money to elevate the entire system. You know, we've clearly got excellent cancer clinicians, excellent clinical trials officers, and you know, a really good cancer system in South Australia, and we think that it's much better use of that money to try and uplift and elevate everybody rather than to funnel that into the rent in a building. One of the other things that became apparent is that that really this needed to be done from within SA Health, in that if it was separate to SA Health, sure, it might be a little bit more nimble, but if we're going to actually affect change within the cancer space, we thought that it would be important for this to be done from within health. So that's the reason why what became the South Australian Comprehensive Cancer Network was seated within the Commission on Excellence and Innovation in Health, which I think is a really perfect group to be working with on this both excellent and innovative project. So what's SAHCAN all about? I think the first thing to say is that it's primarily about connecting cancer care. So as I've already emphasised, the aim of SAHCAN is to try and elevate the entire network. And when I talk about the network, I mean everybody in the cancer space. I don't just mean, you know, the people in the steering committee or the people who are directly involved, but rather everybody who's in the cancer space in South Australia, I view as being part of the network. And along with that, clearly another important part of the network are the people who are affected by cancer. Obviously, these are the people who should be at the centre of everything we do, and we've been very proactive in ensuring that we've had people with lived experience being part of all of our working groups and part of the design of this process, and they're going to be a really important part moving forward as well. And hopefully by building and consolidating and embedding this network, SAHCAN will be the peak platform through which issues of statewide importance in cancer are addressed in South Australia. And hopefully by doing that, we'll be driving and connecting comprehensive cancer care, which means from prevention through diagnosis, treatment and beyond. So hopefully that gives you an overall picture as to what we're aiming for. Now, sorry, I pushed the wrong button here. Thank you. I should use that technology like I said a few minutes ago. All right, so in terms of the current SAHCAN steering committee, we've got very broad representation, quite a large group, with representatives from across the LHNs, from metro, from non-metro, as well as private, as well as research, non-government organisations, particularly Cancer Council, pharmacy and also consumers as well. Looking at that breakdown there, you know, one could probably argue that we haven't yet quite got the balance quite right, but we thought that this is a really good starting point to try and get things moving with SAHCAN. The other role that SAHCAN fulfills is that it is the node of the Australian Comprehensive Cancer Network. So when Cancer Australia laid out their Australian cancer plan a few years back, one of the key aspects was to establish a national network of cancer centres, and originally the focus was very much on trying to link up some of the comprehensive cancer centres, and it's been interesting to see the narrative change slightly within Cancer Australia as well, and they're very much now talking more about having a network, and I don't know if that's been our influence in focusing on the network or whether it's something that we've realised in common, but it certainly fits well with our perspective here as well. Now, as part of the Comprehensive Cancer Network, Cancer Australia is focusing on ensuring equitable access to comprehensive cancer care, focusing on collaboration and sharing of expertise across the country. So again, very much fits with our vision of building the network together rather than working in competition with each other. And of course, also in Cancer Australia's Australian Cancer Plan is a lot of discussion around cancer clinical trials, and again that aligns very closely with what we are hoping to achieve in South Australia. So I've talked a lot about what we hope SAHCAN will be in broad terms and where it all fits in, but we also should have a little bit of a think about what are we actually going to do. And with that in mind, we've established a number of particular priorities. The first big priority is cancer data and intelligence. The second one, clinical trials, presumably why I'm here today. Then research, translation and implementation. And the fourth priority is looking at state and national cancer priorities. And in addition to these particular programs of work, we're also going to be directing a significant sum of the money that we have towards capital purchases that will directly improve patient care. So for instance, you may have heard that there's going to be a PET scanner at Flinders, a PET scanner at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. These are the first capital purchases from SAHCAN, and there's some others that are currently being planned as well. So in addition to these work programs and capital purchases, we also want to ensure that both prevention and improving cancer outcomes in Aboriginal people is woven throughout these streams of work as well. So there definitely need to be very high priorities within this process. So looking at these a little bit more closely, the Cancer Data and Intelligence, or CANDI program, is really about establishing a fit-for-purpose cancer data ecosystem for South Australia. Currently, we collect lots of data and we know what things like overall survival are like, but if someone said, what's the survival for someone with stage 4 lung cancer from Mount Gambier, we'd probably fall slightly uncomfortably and say, well, not quite sure about that. Or if a company came to you guys and said, how many people with ALK-positive anaplastic large cell lymphoma do you have at your site? You'd say, well, I'm guessing it's going to be about 1 per year, but if we can establish a really good cancer data ecosystem, these are some of the questions which we should be able to answer much more readily. And equally importantly, we can use that data ecosystem to become a learning health system to try and identify areas of unwanted variation so that we can try and improve that overall quality of care that we talked about in the cancer plan. The next part of our priorities, as I mentioned, is clinical trials, which I'll bypass on this slide because it's what the rest of the talk's going to be about. The third program is about research translation and implementation, and this is a very broad program of work, including things that range from cancer navigation through to thinking about well-being and also innovative things like theranostics and what have you. And then, of course, the fourth program of work is looking at implementing the cancer plans through things like establishing the optimal care pathways, through prevention, through Aboriginal programs and so forth. So let's shift onto clinical trials. So obviously everyone in this room knows that clinical trials improve outcomes. As we've already said, they're largely responsible for that ongoing improvement in survival that we're seeing in cancer over the last number of decades. However, the problem that we face is that internationally, in developed countries, there's probably only about 7% of patients or less who participate in clinical trials. And when we map out the process of a clinical trial from when we're first contacted through to delivering it, it's readily apparent that there's a number of complex and complicated points that make things difficult to deliver cancer clinical trials for patients. If we think about some of these complex barriers, there's many that we could go through. For example, if we look at awareness, obviously one of the first issues is that the clinician needs to be aware that a clinical trial is actually running. And I suspect that at the moment there are some cancer clinicians working in South Australia who don't know what clinical trials are open at the other hospital down the road. So awareness among clinicians is an issue. Clearly there needs to be awareness with patients as well. So one of the significant barriers is people just being aware of where the trials are. And I know that there's been some efforts through things like Clinical Trial Can Refer that haematology have used, and just recently I know that Carlin have tried to pull together a portal so that within Carlin people know what trials are open. But there needs to be that awareness across the entire system, and I just don't think we currently have that. Similarly, when it comes to accessing clinical trials, currently for patients, it probably depends on where your GP refers you to as to whether you're going to be at a place where there's a clinical trial for you. And that just feels a little bit too random for me. And at least in my experience, I've not seen a whole lot of cross-referral where somebody has sent a patient from one LHN to another so that they can access a clinical trial. The next issue to think about is availability. For rare cancers, there's often just not a trial available, and if we're all focusing on the same clinical trials at a number of different sites, then that means we often don't have capability to open some of those trials for rare cancers. Next up, with regards to regulatory issues, it's no surprise to anybody in this room that governance and ethics takes a long time. There's often duplication that goes on, and this can often be quite a significant disincentive for groups who are wanting to bring clinical trials into the state. And of course, the duplication between sites that I've already mentioned also impedes our ability to take on more studies. And we know very clearly that people who are socially disadvantaged, whether that be people from the non-metro areas, whether it be Indigenous people, that they're less likely to be enrolled on a clinical trial. So we heard about a number of different examples of how these barriers play out in practice. I won't go through each of these in interest of time, but it's evident from each of these examples that there's complex factors that are quite difficult to overcome in terms of getting patients onto clinical trials. So through SAHCAN, we hope to establish a sustainable, consolidated, coordinated statewide approach to cancer clinical trials for South Australia. And through that, what we're hoping to do is to address gaps, reduce duplication and expedite access for patients, and in particular look at increasing capacity and opportunities. And hopefully through that, we'll increase timely access to clinical trials, embed trial participation as standard of care, which is really where this needs to be, and hopefully improve access for disadvantaged groups as well. So we also need to be on the front foot in terms of some things that are happening nationally, in that we're all aware of the National Clinical Trials Governance Framework, and in particular the National One-Stop Shop and National Clinical Trials Front Door. So I think we need to be across this detail, but one of the tensions here is we also can't wait for this to happen. And I think that in South Australia we need to start moving forward with a clear eye on what's going on, but not waiting however many years it's going to take to get these things in action. Pleasingly, this kind of approach of having a networked clinical trials model is something that others have done. In New South Wales, they've pulled together an early phase clinical trials alliance where they're not looking at all cancer clinical trials, but they're predominantly looking at phase 1 trials. And what they've found is that this is a really good way of identifying patients and directing them to the most suitable trials across New South Wales. It's been a really good way of fostering the number of quality early phase trials in their state, and it's also enabled clinicians to build their research experience and knowledge in this space as well. So it's really great to see this sort of thing in action and to see that it actually can be done from this example from New South Wales. So what are we doing to try and progress this? Well, in March of this year, we held a workshop in this room. I suspect probably some of you may have been here. If you were, thank you. And you can see from the list here that there was a broad number of representatives. We invited over 100 people and I think had about 65 attendees representing about 22 different groups. And one of the activities at that workshop was to try and review some of the barriers to clinical trials in South Australia. And these were themed around things like data and digital infrastructure, funding and sustainability, governance and ethics, workforce and capacity, access and participation, and collaboration and engagement. And I won't read out all of these things, but I'm sure that many of the points that are up on the screen there would be things which would resonate with those of you who are working in the cancer clinical trials space. So the next activity that we held on the day was, having identified the barriers, we asked the question of what would have the most impact if it was adequately addressed. What are the current cross-trial synergies that are working well, and what are some of the things that we can really lever off at the moment? And this was something which was then voted on, and off the back of that, we came up with this list of high impact opportunities. And it was really good that these are the things that people thought, because prior to the workshop, these were exactly the sorts of things which we thought would be valuable too. So it was great to see that validated through discussion with people from across the state who came to the workshop. So the items that were ranked highest were firstly the creation of a single centralised referral system for clinical trials. So again, mirroring this concept of having a front door approach. So rather than having trials groups knocking on the doors of people they know, instead we thought it would be valuable to have this single front door where we could then go to all of the sites and say, look, we've been asked about this particular one, let's work out where it would be best for this trial to go. That might be more than one place, but let's have a discussion about that collaboratively, rather than it just being done in the historical, somewhat ad hoc fashion. The second high impact opportunity was looking at trying to standardise trials as part of standard of care across public and private health networks. And certainly there's exemplars within the state where that's already happening, but we thought it's going to be really important to try and try and talk about trials as though this is part of standard of care that you should be thinking about for every single patient. You should be linking it into the MDT discussion, using our clever new data tools to try and inform the MDT team of what trials are open, but really embedding trials as standard of care. The third high impact area was looking at establishing a central digital portal with a trial dashboard for visibility and tracking. And again, as I've mentioned, I'm aware of some things that have been utilised in a small way with regards to this, but we thought this really needs to be done in a sustainable fashion across the entirety of the network so it can be used across all of South Australia. The fourth aspect, I won't try and pretend that I've got a solution for, but I do think it's a really important one, and that's advocacy for sustainable core funding for trial workforce to ensure that the roles are long-term, that there's retention and that there's good career paths for clinical trials professionals. You know, us clinicians simply could not run clinical trials without the data officers and the clinical trials research assistants and everybody else in this space. So we really need to be advocating that for trials to be standard of care, we also need sustainable core funding for the trials workforce. Another aspect that was voted on very highly was the development of having a centralised clinical trials office or some kind of coordination body, particularly when it comes to thinking about governance and ethics, which I'll mention in just a moment. And the final point was looking at empowering consumers and community engagement in trial design and implementation as well. So what's happened since that time? Well, we've established a clinical trials steering committee, and this group represents all LHNs, private sector, governance, digital and data, and this group will have roles in oversight, planning, design, implementation, advocacy and expertise. This group started meeting in June 2025, and you can see the list of names there of all of the people who are involved, so hopefully some familiar names there. We've also looked at establishing an ethics and governance working group, and we are aiming again for representation from governance and ethics across all LHNs. And the focus here is really on looking at streamlined, coordinated governance and ethics processes, recognising that they're not that at the moment. And through this, we hope to establish some evaluation criteria, so some KPIs like time to gain approvals, number of trials approved, and as part of this, we're planning on having a workshop in early November involving all of the governance and ethics people from across the sites. We're also establishing a digital and data working group, focusing on a central portal to enable trial visibility, recruitment status and patient matching. And clearly it'll be really important that we collaborate with the SAHMRI data and intelligence group who are developing this linked cancer data ecosystem that I've mentioned. And currently Candy are in the process of appointing data scientists, business analysts and so on and so forth. We're also in the process of almost completing a current state mapping. So Madeline and Van, who I'm pleased to see in the audience today, have been in contact with many of you to try and get a really good sense of what the current state is. And through that, that'll help inform the ethics and governance workshop in November. So thank you to those who've spoken with them, and for those who haven't, thank you that you're arranging to do so. So hopefully what I've highlighted today is that SAHMRI is really all about the network. It's about building the network. It's about building the platform for everything that's relevant to statewide issues in cancer care in South Australia. It's about being the node for the Australian Comprehensive Cancer Network so that we're not just working together locally but also nationally, and obviously we'll be guided by the SA Cancer Plan in this process. And in terms of actual solid outcomes, I think that we've got some really clear areas of priority, with clinical trials being one of the really foundational ones in that space. So thank you all for joining on this journey together with us, and hopefully what we'll see over the next 4 years and beyond is the path becoming more and more clear, and going from being the path from this Chinese proverb to the road to the highway. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. Comprehensive in the title, comprehensive in your talk as well, so I've covered a huge amount there. But I'm conscious we wanted to have some opportunity for some immediate questions. I will check in a minute if there's any that have come through online, but if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions they would like to raise, and just wait, there's a microphone that will come to you if you can say who you are. Okay, we've got one down here, Alex, if you don't mind. Oh, I got one. Okay, Jane.
I've got the voice. My question is, you had the list of reasons why people are not participating in trials. It's only 7%. Of the list that you put forward, what do you think is the peak reason why only 7% of people in developed countries are participating?
It's a good question, and I think that one of the challenges is that we don't have good data around that. I think that list that I had there is from UK, where they have looked at the data in this regard. Personally, I think that access and availability are some of the really big ones, particularly availability. And this is where I think that if we can look in a rational fashion at where we are placing trials, and if we can try really hard to not unnecessarily duplicate them, that we can hopefully then create additional capacity within the system to take on additional clinical trials. The other, I guess, aspect to the answer is that we hope through our data and intelligence program that we'll get a better sense of how many people in South Australia are actually going on to trials, because I don't think we honestly know. We probably could come up with a numerator, but the challenge is sort of working out the denominator there. And even then, should your denominator be everyone with cancer, or should it be people for whom there's a trial available? So I think we really need to disentangle this a little bit. I'm interested whether you've got any thoughts in that regard. Or anyone else in the room?
I probably do.
Yeah.
Maybe opinions rather than, anything based on much, but I do wonder if much of it comes back to the physicians and what they know about what's out there and really making sure that they're in a position to make sure they can deliver to their patients in the best possible way.
You're right, the awareness is so important.
I'm not sure it should be pushed by the patients particularly. Because, there's only so much you can take in if you've got cancer.
Yeah, I think there's two elements to that. I think you're right, we do need to have that central portal where people can easily find out what are the trials that are out there. We probably need to change our way of thinking so that there is a willingness to cross-refer, so that if I'm sitting in, say, I don't know, the Royal Adelaide and there's a trial at Flinders, that I'm prepared to pick up the phone and call up my colleague down the road and say, I've got a patient who might be eligible for this trial. With regards to your point about patients, I think there probably is still some value in us being able to educate the community more broadly around trials, and as part of the whole cancer navigation thing, encourage patients to ask their clinician, is there a trial I can go on? I think I could probably count on two hands the amount of times I've been asked that in my life. And if we can start embedding that in the same way that things like patients asking about fertility preservation has happened, and I guess that's a change I've seen over the time that I've been a clinician, then I think we'll have done a really good thing as well. So I think you're right, awareness is really important, particularly on the clinician side, but patients too.
Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Tom, there is one online.
Okay, Alex, can you read out that question? Thank you.
How can public and private entities, beyond the key opinion leaders, build more capacity to deliver inpatient therapies?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How can public and private entities, beyond the key opinion leaders, build more capacity to deliver inpatient therapies?
Yeah, okay. Good question. So I think that this is again where it comes back to the importance of SAHMRI being the broader network, not just the key opinion leaders. Obviously we need to draw in the key opinion leaders because they are exactly that. But I would want to see SAHMRI to be the broader network where everybody has got capacity to be involved. But I think that this is where it comes back to us having a really effective and engaged steering committee, and we've driven home to the steering committee that one of their key roles is bidirectional communication, that they are able to communicate to the steering committee what's happening within their LHNs, but also that they take responsibility for taking that out. We don't want a steering committee who come along and sit there in a meeting every 6 weeks and say, oh, that was lovely, I'm glad to have given my opinion. We want them to be actively involved in this space. But I think we in SAHMRI are going to have to take a role here as well, and we're going to be having to walk the floors and make sure that we're going out and talking to people and meeting with them And this is, sure, it's clinicians, but it's also the nursing staff. And, one thing that I'm quite proud of through the last couple of years of the Cancer Network is we've established our Cancer Nurses Collaborative. That way it gives the nursing staff a voice here, and hopefully through some of the nurse research champions that will enable other elements of research, not just our traditional trials as well. So I think it would be really good to have this almost distributive model where everyone feels like they can be engaged both in public and private. I'm not sure if I've answered the question properly, but that's my answer.
Just one last one I'd like to ask Michael, because I was pleased to see you talking about equitable access as one of the big priorities, and obviously many of us represent statewide entities as well, and so I'm just interested in the thoughts around the regional communities, the underserved communities' access, particularly to clinical trials going forward, and whether the interstate networks of doing things that we can learn from.
Yeah, look, this is so important. We know from the data that the more remote your home is, the worse your survival from cancer is. And this is something that, you're right, we need to look at trying to change. We also presume, probably pretty good reasons, that the more remote you are, the less likely you're going to be in a cancer clinical trial. So we need to turn these things around. How are we going to do that? Right from the start, we've engaged with the Rural Support Services. Aaron Wislang was previously on our SACAN steering committee and interim executive group until he left for Townsville, and we're planning on continuing to have strong regional voice both on the steering committee and also the executive group as well. The other thing which we're very keen to do is to go and talk to some people in the regions, not just to have Kate Wislang and Helen Phillips and Kung on our steering committee, they currently are there, but also to get out and talk to the EDMSs, the CEOs, the people in the regional areas, to say, what are some of your difficulties? We've so far only done that with RMC, but I've obviously got a list of the others who we want to go and have a talk to as well. But I think one of the really key areas is going to be teletrials. But there's some major barriers there, and in talking with some of my clinician colleagues, some of them have said I wanted to open a teletrial, but what I discovered was that I needed to put it through research governance for every single one of the 8 non-metro LHNs, and given that maybe one of those sites might recruit one patient, it just didn't seem sensible. So again, this comes back to that question of governance and ethics and looking at single front door. I also think we need to understand the data around the regions better. And so this comes back to the importance of having our data group so we can ask those important questions, highlight the groups who need that input, and really understand the landscape before we just go trying to throw solutions out there.
Thank you, Michael. That's fantastic, and thank you for your time today. Can we thank Michael for his presentation? Okay, swiftly moving on. Already probably about 3 minutes behind. That's a good start. Okay, so next it's my great pleasure to introduce and welcome Jess Southwood and Pascal Dadwheeler from the SA team of the Australian Teletrials Program. Nice segue there from Michael onto this. Jess is the manager of the Australian Teletrial Program in South Australia, based in the CMO's office in the Department of Health and Wellbeing, and Jess has led a number of statewide clinical trials projects across SA Health and also has experience as a clinical research coordinator. Pascal is the clinical trial liaison officer for the SA program, and she is based in Port Lincoln. Pascal holds a doctorate of pharmacy and has had various national, international and national experiences in government and non-government organisations, including many academic positions as well. So we're going to hear about the progress of building clinical trial infrastructure in regional SA. Over to you, Jess, I think is it.
Okay. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the opportunity to present here today. It's nice that our presentation follows Michael's because, as you've heard, a priority of SACAN is to improve the equity of access to rural, regional and remote communities. And so our program is just that. Yeah, we'll get the slides up. There we go. And more specifically, we're looking to build that clinical trials infrastructure, because prior to our program commencing back in, I guess, 2022, there was very little clinical trial activity occurring outside of metropolitan Adelaide. So it's been a real priority for us over the past 3 years to really try and reduce those inequities that we see. So I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the land that we're on today of the Kaurna people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today. And I would also like to acknowledge the lands on which this work has been done across South Australia. So as Tom mentioned, both of us will be presenting today. I'll give a really quick recap on the program, and then Pascal will present an update on some of the numbers and what we've achieved. So for those that may not know, the Australian Teletrial Program, we're funded by the Commonwealth Government's Medical Research Future Fund. It was part of the 2019 Rural, Regional, Remote Clinical Trial Enabling Infrastructure Grant. And I guess one of the really important statistics we see is that currently 88% of clinical trials are run from city or urban areas. So rural, regional and remote patients, they can't access them very easily. They usually are required to travel or move. And so we're really trying to improve that clinical trial infrastructure so that we can enable and also extend existing and new clinical trials into these areas. So one of the most confusing things about the Australian Teletrial Program is actually the name. So when people hear teletrial, they assume telehealth, but it's more than that. So the best definition of a teletrial is that it's a type of decentralised clinical trial. It still requires physical sites. So in terms of our rural, regional and remote locations, there's always going to be a satellite site, or recently I've heard the terminology partner site, which also shows that partnership and collaboration between these primary and satellite site clusters that work together to conduct the same clinical trial. And the sites are connected using telecommunications technology. And the roles and responsibilities of each site is outlined in a supervision plan. So it's all documented, it's all conducted according to GCP, but it's just having that additional site. And so one of the very first objectives was for each jurisdiction to establish a Regional Clinical Trial Coordinating Centre, or RCCC, as a point of contact. And so that's what our team does. So we were established in May 2022 in the Department for Health and Wellbeing, and we have a team with extensive knowledge and expertise in clinical trials who can provide that hands-on support for the teletrial and clinical trial startup activities. And as Michael mentioned, it can be quite complex to navigate when you've got multiple sites and multiple approvals that you have to work through. So that's why our team's here to offer that support. We also have supporting pillars and collaborate really closely with all the regional local health networks and other stakeholders to support this clinical trial activity. We provide clinical trials education and training, and we've got a dedicated training and development officer who can support these regional sites to upskill and train their research staff. And we also fund AC Tech in South Australia. So for those that may not know, that's the Australian Clinical Trials Education Centre that's available for everyone to access free of charge. And there's a lot of clinical trials training courses and webinars available, so please check that out if you haven't. We also have some funding available to assist sites to build clinical trials capacity and capability. We can provide equipment, and we're working collaboratively, like I said, with the LHNs to support the development of research processes, and our mobile workforce is available to travel to the regions to support some of the clinical trials and teletrials. And at the end of last year, we committed additional funding to support up to 12 FTE across the 6 regional LHNs to support that development of the skilled regional research workforce locally. And this will enable each region to have dedicated research staff to help build their foundations and develop a research strategy and just be that point of contact for all research inquiries and approvals, which is it differs at the moment by location and the maturity of the regional LHNs. So this slide, it just tries to capture the journey that we've been on since 2019 when the funding was announced. So as I previously said, we commenced our team in 2022, initially with a small number of positions, and a lot of the work in the early days was around stakeholder engagement and capability mapping in the regions. We also created 3 nurse consultant clinical research coordinator positions, which were the first dedicated research positions in the regional LHNs. And they were made possible thanks to the support from ATP, the universities, and also the Riverland Mallee Coorong Local Health Network. In September 2022, AC Tech first opened in South Australia, and we now have over 1,500 total users in South Australia. And the majority of them are SA Health employees, but there's also a large number of university users and private organisations. So it's really great to see that those numbers show the need for a system or a platform like that to provide clinical trials training. And this year we've averaged almost 70 new user registrations each month and over 100 course completions each month. So we're definitely not at our capacity, seeing that there's constantly new registrations, and the courses are continually being added on, so there's some new courses coming up as well, and if there's any new courses that people want, just reach out and we can be in touch and help facilitate potentially new content as well. So in 2023, we got our first teletrial up and running, and that was an oncology teletrial with the primary site in Adelaide and the satellite site in Darwin. We've since had other multiple cross-jurisdictional teletrials with Darwin, and that really shows that collaborative approach we have with all our stakeholders, not only in South Australia, but across Australia as well. And we like to say that one of the strengths of the program in SA is how we've adapted the Australasian teletrial model that was originally established in oncology to a variety of therapeutic areas. And you can see in that cloud there some of the different types of trials that we've had up and running, and across a large number of sites as well. So not only the public hospitals, but universities, GPs as well. So we're really proud of that momentum that we're building and the large number of teletrials we have been able to support so that our regional participants can access these clinical trials closer to home. And I'll pass over to Pascal to give an update on the numbers.
Thank you, Jess. So you heard the soft story. I'm going to give you the hard numbers. I remember sitting here 3 years ago, and we're just presenting the program, and it's really gave me pleasure, and I'm very proud of the success we have achieved since then. I'm presenting actually this data to you today. The numbers you see on the slides are from the March report, as we are bound to report every 6 months. 18 teletrials have been approved, with 4 that were I never say that appropriately, but I want to acknowledge my colleagues from NT and all the states who are online and with whom we have collaborated to make that happen. We based our choice of the kind of studies we wanted to sponsor on a dashboard. I presented on that dashboard 3 years ago, so it's not as sexy as Candy, but I think I have to find a name as well for our dashboard. That was publicly available data extracted out of all the websites available to us and put in a Power BI with a data analyst. I can do that. And a very useful dashboard presenting the needs or the health prevalence of the diseases in country. Our motto has always been collaboration and not competition, as Jess already mentioned to you, but I think it's the theme of the day as well. To date, we have more than 400 participants registered, so far more than reported on these slides, and we have 22 studies approved and registered with us. From the camembert graph on your right, and this is the only French food reference you will have today in my talk, the studies have from various collaboration partnerships, mostly 50% from local and interstate universities. They've been great supporters of our program. The remaining is from mixed research groups, investigator-led studies, and we really want to sponsor the local studies, and research institute and some commercial sponsors. You can also notice that the participants are from various postcodes, from one which was Darwin, as already mentioned, completion up to 6, and we aim for 7. So we actually achieve one of the KPIs of the program, which is reaching out to the far participants who can actually join. As you heard from Michael, the story is not always rosy, and there are some kind of hurdles and roadblocks. For us, it's about, it's a complex landscape, and sometimes the reason are cross-sectional. First one is the unsuitability of some studies for regional sites. Feasibility study checks failed, sponsors don't reply, and recruitment is closed before the paperwork is finalized. Nice way to say, that documentation is always a major roadblock. Some studies are still pending because of these documentation roadblocks for approvals, ethic amendments, change of protocols, you name it. Thirdly, some studies are on hold. And because they're active at some teletrial sites, by sponsors are delaying but not actually giving reasons or not communicating with us, and the regional sites are not ready to start. As you heard, administration of the paperwork is maintained by the central office, but there are also roadblocks with budget ethics that the sites have named to us. On the next slide is actually presenting some of this data. There's 3 different sources, so it's a bit small at the bottom of the slide. So we run an analysis of the ANZ-CTR, so the Australian clinical trials from 2005 to 2022 with the same data analyst that did the dashboard. And we find that 1.4% of the registered postcode participants were from 3 to 7, hence the inequity. You can see from the slide that mostly of the sites reported difficulties with sponsors not replying and also budgeting. And there is 1/5 of the participants who never achieve completion of studies. This was a little bit of a financial analysis as well we wanted to state, but we already heard from Jess that we have invested in EFTs that didn't exist before. We committed to actually support the local health network with research capabilities and with scaffolding all this infrastructure with FIFO model and also administrative support. The education and training has been very successful and has been kind of estimated to $200,000 of hours and also training. Last but not least was actually the financial impact that all these studies had in regional settings. For one site recruiting 1 participant out of 12 of the funding studies, it would have raised $100,000, which didn't exist before, and this will enable the business model of the clinical trials. Last slide. We want to celebrate the Compass South Australia, which was launched last year by our training and development officer. And to date, we almost have 100 clinical trials coordinators across a wide range of disciplines that are actually contributing. 8 out of the 10 LHNs are registered and also people from the department. We have a new training and development officer, like Jess mentioned. Linda, please, would you like to stand up? Please do talk to Linda. She's full of new ideas, and she wants to explore these ideas with you. She will run a new activity monthly. There will be some forums with new topics, so please come and talk to Linda about what would interest you. We also want to expand outside Adelaide with these new sites we're creating, and also have a membership outside SA. You can see the QR code that will lead you to the registration form. And I also want to acknowledge all the members of the ATP team that came to us today. Please do talk to them if you have any questions. Thank you very much for listening, and we hope to work with you in the future.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Pascal. And you'll see that on most of our presentations, we do have links for people to get in touch. But even if you don't see it up on there, as I said at the beginning, either send us an email or through the Zoom chat if you want to connect with any of our speaker groups today. Okay, moving quickly on, it's my pleasure now to welcome some members of the SAHMRI Clinical Trials Platform team. And it was going to be Emma Heath who was going to join, but unfortunately Emma has somehow developed laryngitis in the last 24 hours. Whether that was on purpose or not, well, I'm sure not. Really pleased that Dr. Jane Rathjen has kindly stepped into the breach at the last minute. But joining her also will be Joanna Cole, who's a clinical project manager for the platform, Joanna has extensive experience in managing clinical trials across various therapeutic areas, along with a background in university-level teaching. So am I handing to you, Jane, first? Okay, over to you, Jane.
That one. Okay. Good afternoon. So today I'm here to provide an update of the SAHMRI Clinical Trials Platform. I'll be highlighting a couple of projects that we support and to tell you about their potential impacts to patients and the community. Just trying to work out where I am. So SAHMRI Clinical Trials Platform, for those of you who aren't familiar, and I know a number of people here have actually worked with us in the past, we're a team of clinical trial professionals who manage every stage of the clinical study, from local projects to large international trials. We work on a diverse range of studies across all sorts of therapeutic areas. We're unique because we act as a translational research hub. We use both our own SAHMRI researchers, but also work with our external partners to make sure the clinical trials are delivered. We operate as an academic research organisation where we support a full suite of services, very similar to what a CRO does, but with an academic focus. So working more with the academic timeframes, we're well aware of the vagaries of the grant funding rounds and how that can impact on trials and how we can manage those trials within that. We also do project management, study coordination, digital marketing campaigns, data management and study monitoring. Essentially, we provide the support where you need it. And then that way, we help to streamline the research process. We're also a fully functional clinical trial site with our own on-site outpatient clinical rooms. We partner with clinicians who act as investigators on studies and collaborate with CROs. Again, there's a few of those in this room here now. And in that way, we provide them with a site that focuses on community and outpatient participants, particularly for studies led by GPs. So why is there a clinical trials platform and why does SAHMRI have one of these? Essentially, we're here to translate research into impact. So from here, I'll show you a couple of clinical trials that we're currently involved with to whet your appetite and start you thinking about how you can work with us in the future. First up, I'm pleased to show you some of the early results from the PREACH-M trial. So this is a study we're currently managing on behalf of Professor Dan Thomas. Chronic myelomonocytic leukemia, CMML, is a rare aggressive blood cancer with few treatment options and a low survival rate. So there are about 1 to 2 cases every 100,000 people. It's more common in men than in women. And the diagnosis is usually, fortunately, later in life, sort of 70 to 75 years old. Our trial combines standard therapy with an investigational antibody that aims to neutralise a key signalling pathway. The preliminary results are very promising. So far, 22 out of our 34 participants showed significant improvement, where the harmful cells and inflammation dropped dramatically within 3 months. 15 participants have been on the treatment for over a year with no relapse, and 1 patient has been in remission for 4 years. I'm very happy that we continue to support this study and the potential to get it out to the CMML patients. We're also running a trial led by Professor David Lynn and Professor Helen Marshall. This project tackles a very crucial issue, which is how to manage vaccine effectiveness in infants who have already been treated with antibiotics. So what we find in these babies that have already been treated with antibiotics is when they get vaccinated, they don't produce as many antibodies, so they've got a weakened immune response. The trial was very simple, but it's powerful, and it's going to test whether or not a daily probiotic can improve vaccine responses and overall immunity. This could help to optimise early life vaccination and improve long-term health for children. Also, we see in these children who've had early stage antibiotics that they suffer from allergies, asthma, obesity, those sorts of things later on in life. Again, another trial which could have a large impact. The next one is of interest to some of us, probably more than others, but this is a trial looking into how to delay ageing. Not just through your eyesight or the wrinkles that you get, but autophagy has been found to be somewhat related to whether or not you'll get Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and any other of those ageing diseases. So this study, which we've been doing with Professor Tim Sargent, and that is a picture of him on the left-hand side, just get that right, is how he is today. On the right-hand side, that's Tim when he's 70, so we've put the AI over him to show how he ages. So his study is focusing on autophagy, which is cellular recycling. Based on decades of research, we expected that a high-protein meal would slow down this recycling. But our findings in humans were surprising. We saw no change in autophagy after a meal. This highlights a critical lesson. We can't assume that what we see in animal models will directly translate into humans. Our results with this underscore the need for more human-specific research in this area to understand how to truly boost this vital process in people. So watch this space. This is a very hot area of clinical trials. So that's a brief overview. Right now I will hand over to the wonderful Joanna Cole. Jo's working on the PREACH study, which I showed you earlier. And she'll be presenting on serious adverse events from the perspective of a trial sponsor. In the meantime, what I will say is if you do have any questions about clinical trials and you see a way that you could perhaps work with us, speak to Emma when she has a voice, or myself in the meantime. We'd love to have a chat, see how we can do it. Thank you. Thanks, Jo.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, I'm going to talk to you briefly about SAEs, which are these lovely occurrences that happen for those of us who work with patients on clinical trials. Usually you'll settle down to your desk after seeing patients in clinic, do your data entry, do those queries that we always hound you for, and you get a phone call from your investigator saying, sorry, patient ABC has been admitted. And you go, oh, good, lucky me, I get to do an SAE. Now, why do I, as your project manager, am I hot on your tail to get this to me as soon as possible? So I'm going to talk to you why this is important and how to get me off your tail so you can get it right first time and stop me harassing you. Okay, so what is this SAE? It's a serious adverse event. So it's when a patient has an unexpected admission to hospital, can be a death, endangering their life, prolonged hospitalisation, or birth defects. In most cases, it is that admission to hospital. With that, just to clarify, if you have a patient who is admitted to or is seen in an emergency department, that is not quite an SAE until they are actually admitted to the hospital for their complication. So what I'm looking for from a sponsor point of view when you send this information to me because your patient's been admitted is to have a look, first of all, what is the term of this SAE? Why is it they've been admitted to hospital? And then I'm going to have a look at your investigator on site to see what their thoughts are about this complication and whether it is related to the investigational product that they have been given on clinical trial. Is it definitely, probably, or possibly related? For us, that all means the same thing. So no matter which one you tick, for me, it means, okay, you're suspecting that this is something to do with the trial that the investigational product we are using, or is it unlikely that it has anything to do with the product they are giving them? And how your investigator assigns causality is for them to actually have a look at this brochure that we give them at the beginning of your trial. We do your SIV, we send you this thing called the investigator brochure, and your clinician says, yes, I have read it, acknowledged I have read it. Likely not true. It usually gets filed to the side and never looked at. This is the time to get it out and actually get them to encourage them to have a look at, is it really associated with the treatment they were giving them? Because if you sign that say they are possibly, and you want to sit on the fence related to the treatment, it's most likely that I'm going to have to take this further and report to the TGA. So please have a look at your IB at this point. So I take this information, I send it to my team of doctors who look after the trial, and they then look at it and say, do they suspect or not suspect that it's related to the treatment? And do they expect these results or not expect these results? And based on their assessments, we may end up with a SUSA on our hands. So this is when you get your suspected, unexpected, serious adverse reaction. And in this case, I will then need to take the information that you have provided me in this report and submit it to the TGA. And I may then get further information from my advanced, more senior safety team to get more information from you as a site. So the more information you provide me in this report, and we give you templates to fill out, the more accurate you are with those reports, the better the outcome for me to pass this information to the TGA is. So in the NHMRC guidelines, we do have these lovely flowcharts for you to understand how these adverse events get graded and at what point they need to be submitted to the TGA. So on your site level, you need to tell us whether they're serious or not serious, and whether they are related or not related to the treatment given, and whether they are then, we determine whether they are expected or unexpected on the trial. And if everything lines up, then we may end up with a SUSAR on our hands. So timelines for reporting are really critical, and this is why I might be hot on your tail to actually get this report to me in with a lot of information. So you have 24 hours to send this information to me. If this is due to a death or there's life-threatening events that happen in this SAE, I only have 7 days to get my information from my safety team and have 7 days to report it to the TGA. So if you delay in your sending me of this SAE, it delays me and gives me less time to then chase my doctors and my team for the answers that I need. If it's purely SUSAR without any death or life-threatening complications, then I get a little bit more time. I get 15 days to report it to the TGA. So how do you avoid queries on your SAE so that I don't keep asking you and querying you and sending you emails to get me more information? First of all, name your event appropriately. So most of us now use these things called CTC AE criteria. If you don't already, download it on your phone. They've got a lovely app. If you can't sleep at night, thumb through it. You'll be surprised what you can die of. It's quite an interesting list, or not, or what things are mild. And CTC criteria are graded from mild all the way to severe, so there are 5 points of grading on this. And provide me a good narrative of what has actually happened to the patient on this journey, which has ended up in this SAE. Please give me a good list of other conmeds, because the reason they're in hospital and feeling poorly may be because they've been put on some other drug that has caused the symptoms, and it isn't at all the study drug that we have been given to them on trial. If your SAE does become a SUSAR, I do need to report it to the TGA, and then all the other information you report in that form has to then be uploaded to the TGA. So all of their characteristics, why they died, if they died, and all the therapeutic drug information they've been given. So what dose they've been on, how long they've been on trial, have you stopped the dose, what have you done to minimise any effects of the drug. Some questions I get from sites, which I've got comments, so just to answer them for you while we have you here. Is death necessarily a SUSAR? May not be. It is definitely an SAE because the patient has died, so we do need to report that. Death on itself is not an SAE term, so please don't put death as your reason for the SUSAR or for the SAE, mainly because you can't grade death. You can't have mild death and severe death. You're dead, you're dead. So, but what is it that the patient has died of? So if they've bled mildly or bled severely, put that into your term. When I was a coordinator at Flinders, I did have a patient who did die on study, not from study drug. They simply went out to the pub, had too many drinks, fell off the balcony, did not see the next day, and we put them in remission as well. So that was a really sad day for everyone involved, especially the patient. Does the investigator need to sign my SAE? Yes, ideally, but if, as most of them come through 4 p.m, 5 p.m. on the Friday and they are not around, you can send me the initial SAE not signed, and as soon as someone's available on your delegation log, sign it, send it to me, please. That way at least I know it's coming. Can I have more than one term on my SAE? My patient came in with headache and vomiting and they are an inpatient. Usually only one of those criteria will form the SAE criteria. So put only one criteria in your SAE, please. The other one probably is just an AE and log that accordingly with the severity. And last of all, your physician, I don't want to read the IB. Can I just put possibly as a causality because I want to sit on the fence and I can't be bothered? Please do your best effort to review your IB and either give me a definite yes or a no for whether it is likely to be related to the treatment. If not, you are one step closer, or I am one step closer to having a SUSAR on my hands and having reported to the TGA and then querying you if your report doesn't include all the information that I need. So in a nutshell, Please report your SAEs to your sponsors in a timely manner to save yourself getting queries, and send your reports, follow up when available. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Joe. Wow, I didn't know so much. I do now know a lot about Sousas. I thought that was something that a marching band played with, but that's obviously a different type of Sousa. Okay, so we will move on now. I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome Trina O'Donnell, the Director of Strategic Projects at Bellberry. I'm sure many of you know, as a national independent not-for-profit organisation, Bellberry provides scientific and ethical reviews for 40% of all TGA registered clinical trials in Australia. Trina's journey with Bellberry began in 2010 when she was the operations manager overseeing research ethics submissions. In her current role as Director of Strategic Projects, she focuses on developing new services to support the research sector and Bellberry's growth, with the dual goals of protecting research participants and improving the quality, efficiency and effectiveness of research. So with a background both in science and business, Trina has a wealth of experience across various roles, including patent examination, policy development, intellectual property management and regulatory affairs. She's also a very passionate football, aka soccer, player, and is an avid Arsenal fan, but I know we won't hold that against her or mention the result over the weekend either. There you go Liverpool. But Trina will take the team sports theme into a talk and talk about life sciences and clinical trials. Trina, we're in your capable hands.
Hi everyone, thank you Tom. Thanks for mentioning the result from the weekend, and well done to all those Liverpool supporters out there. It was a cracking goal, so I have to give you that much. I'd like to firstly acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands of the Kaurna people today here in Adelaide, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and to everyone online joining from First Nations lands around Australia as well. As you know, today's theme is Collaborate, Innovate and Translate Clinical Trials in South Australia and beyond. As Tom touched on, for me, I believe life sciences are a global team sport, and all of us here are players in that sport. As someone who is passionate about sport and life sciences, I want to focus on the similarities between the two and how the sporting perspective does translate into life sciences. Like sport, life sciences is not contained by borders or to individual countries. And the challenges from curing diseases to ensuring food security, to mitigating climate change, to responding to pandemics are truly enormous. No single researcher, no single company, no single hospital, no single university can take a discovery from an idea to a therapy that transforms lives. Clinical trials need teamwork at every level, across disciplines, organisations and borders. Team sports don't win a game without that collaboration and cooperation. And we can't make advances in areas such as genomics or regenerative medicine or precision health without working together. The best sports teams have members with differing skills and talent. And similarly, that diversity is important in clinical trials as well. Diversity is strength, with different skills, not just across the roles, but within those roles as well. And importantly, differing perspectives as we work towards those goals. In the team, we have different players who have that same role, but they do it very differently, and all of that contributes to the team. For me, Theo Walcott, Bukayo Saka, two great players in that position, but do it very differently, and I'm happy to talk Arsenal later. As Michael touched on, we need researchers pushing the boundaries of discovery, clinicians translating ideas into patient care, data scientists making sense of that evidence, regulators ensuring safety and ethics, industry partners bringing all of those solutions to scale, and importantly, patients and communities who don't just benefit from the research, but are essential in shaping that research and the direction of the research as well. Each role is vital, and if one piece of that chain is missing, the trials won't succeed. Of course, teamwork also comes with challenges. Different regulations, different data standards, different funding models can create barriers. But just as in sport, the strength of the team lies in its ability to navigate those challenges together, fairly and transparently. And the challenges can lead to innovation as well. And they're worth it, because when we collaborate on those challenges, we don't just share the workload, we increase the impact. So it was actually back in 2004 that a challenge and some innovation led to the creation of Bellberry. The buyers of a hospital here in Adelaide decided that the Human Research Ethics Committee was going to be closed because it was considered to be an insurance risk. But there was research happening at that hospital, so how was that going to be monitored and managed? So the question was asked, can we set up an HREC without a hospital? It hadn't been done before. So the legislation was examined, and the man who became our founding chair, Fraser Bell, discovered that there was no obstacle to institutional independent HREC, as long as all the regulatory requirements were met. So the directors of Bellberry decided that we should offer ethics on a fee for service, but that it was a not-for-profit company. So with any profits invested back into health and medical research. So when Bellberry started, there were two objectives: to protect the welfare of research participants and to improve the quality, efficiency and effectiveness of research. So everything we do, we have these in mind. More than 20 years later, we are internationally recognised for the quality, timeliness and robustness of our ethics reviews, and are a key part of the Australian health infrastructure. We've actually become the largest HREC provider in Australia. We see about 40% of the TGA registered clinical trials. And on top of that, we do social and behavioural studies as well. So we've become part of the team for about 1,800 research organisations, approving more than 11,000 clinical trials. And that's literally hundreds of thousands of participants that have been able to have access through those clinical trials to those health innovations. But then we take the money generated and reinvest it back into the Australian research sector to continue protecting the welfare of participants and improving the quality of research. So far, we've donated around $12 million back into the research sector. Our impact was actually recognised last year when we won the National 2025 Telstra Health Best of Business Award for Championing Health, which was a great honour. So how do we spend the money? One of our flagship initiatives is the Bellberry Viatel Fellowship. This provides $1.35 million to some of the most brightest and smartest people in the country to spend on a 5-year research plan. Our first recipient was Professor Marnie Blewett. She had discovered a gene that was a marker for Prader-Willi syndrome. This disease affects children, and it's a devastating condition for children where their first few years of their life progress normally, but then they start to develop issues with speech, walking and function, and ultimately, sadly, pass away. So with the Bellberry Viatel Fellowship, this allowed Marnie to focus her work on and energy on this gene and actually understand the epigenetics to be able to switch this gene on and off. So her research has now led to receiving commercialisation funding to start to develop a cure for this disease. This is just one example, I guess, of the extraordinary possibilities that accrue from investment back into health. There are so many aspects of clinical trials that rely on teamwork. The development cycle itself so new drugs, new devices, as well as many interrelated elements of the research process. Michael started today talking about the Cancer Network and how much collaboration is involved in that. Pascal and Jessica talked about teletrials, and again, there's so much to be unlocked in the capacity to be able to do research more broadly outside of the CBD, outside of the universities and hospitals, and be able to have more patients be able to have access to the work that we all do. There's international clinical cancer studies that now unite thousands of patients on multiple countries and allow us to test treatments faster and with greater confidence. The rare disease trials, where we rely on networks of clinicians and families spread across the globe, and because particularly of it being rare, usually one site is not enough. We need that global impact to be able to help those people with those rare conditions. And digital technologies now connect researchers and participants in ways that we couldn't have even imagined a decade ago. Our excellence for doing research in Australia makes us more attractive to global research destination, as a global research destination, meaning more access for Australians and more jobs in life sciences. As a country, we're just 0.33% of the world's population, which places us, you would think, very low on the drug launch ladder. When companies are looking to place trials, they may look at us or Brazil, Canada, Vietnam or Singapore. But with our rapid startup times, along with our excellent researchers, excellent facilities, our diverse populations and programs such as the R&D tax concessions, this actually pushes us up that ladder a fair way. The Australian clinical trials sector actually contributed $1.6 billion to the Australian economy in 2022, according to the MTP Connect report. Sorry, every time I see 1.6 billion, I don't know whether you have this, where you have sometimes these random images pop in your head. It's like $1.6 billion. So now I've put that worm in your head. Maybe every time you think about the work you're doing, you'll be able to go, I support $1.6 billion worth of work in all the work that you do as well. To give you a sense of the impact of this, how we make this globally, our own Bellberry data reveals that more than half of the new therapies that are reviewed by the FDA have actually been through a Bellberry committee at some point in their life cycle. Think about how that translates to the trials that we've done here in Australia, how many investigators that's involved, how many sponsors, the number of participants, and the global impact that that's actually had. In the team sport, the game's played for the fans. In the life sciences, we're playing for the participants and the patients. Ultimately, it's for them. They're the integral part of the team. We're playing this role for the development of the research, and their voice is hugely significant. The recognition of the importance of the voice of the consumers and patients is actually growing. There's already many organisations who have or are establishing those consumer and advisory roles within their organisation and provide their input into that research. To support this, Bellberry is also now piloting a consumer and community advisory panel. The panel is made up of people with lived experience, and from those reviews, the advice is then provided back to the researchers and sponsors to hopefully input into the study design. So we're very excited about developing that. We're also investigating the ways that consumers can input into the team through our CTIQ, which is a member-based organisation dedicated to enabling efficient and effective patient-centred trials. Bellberry is very proud to host this organisation. So Bellberry, so CTIQ basically works in promoting the voice of the patients or the participants in clinical trials, and again won an award at ARCS this year for that work. An example is the Beyond the Form toolkit, which some of you may have already heard of, even whether through your involvement or the use of it. This helps bridge the gap between the communication between the participants and researchers after that recruitment and consent process. So how does the communication continue after that initial stage so that participants are getting that ongoing support throughout the trial? So this was developed in partnership with the VCCC Alliance, and CTIQ collaborated with participants, sponsors, site teams and ethics committee members. And the aim was, as I say, to create this evidence-based insights and real-world tools to better help communication for the participants. For Bellberry, the equivalent of the Olympics are our thought leadership symposia, where we bring players together from across the globe and different parts of the ecosystem to tackle a wicked problem in research. So an early example of this was where we were looking at the challenges of early treatment switching in clinical trials for oncology. So that work led to some best practice guidelines for trial design and statistical methods, and from an international expert panel. Jane touched on earlier the challenges with non-animal models. So we're actually coordinating a 3-year plan at the moment of a series of symposia where we are looking at the technology around the development of non-animal models, new approach models. There's multiple names for NAMs, but the guidance isn't keeping up with the technology. So we're looking at how we can support that as well. These symposia have really been a global team sport because we've had representatives from the TGA, NIH, European agencies, as well as the TGA, industry, researchers and participants here as well. So in a team sport, in the life sciences, everyone has their part to play and everyone's working towards a common goal and everyone is aiming to win. Of course, there are competitors on the field as well, but maybe the difference between us as the life sciences and as a global team sport and actual team sport is that there is and can be more than one winner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trina. Some very wise words there, and I'm sure we are all Team SA in this room, working to further clinical trials for the benefit of our community. So thank you for those words. Okay, we'll move swiftly on. I hope everybody did get some lunch before we started in here, because we're powering through. You know, there's no break. We're going to go all the way through. So we're now going to hear about Health Data Australia and the HISANDA initiative, the SADO for which HTSA hosts. So it's my great pleasure to introduce a close colleague, Dr. Rhys Williams, who is the project manager for the People Research Data Commons team at the Australian Research Data Commons. With a background in biomedical research and extensive experience in clinical research environments, Rhys provides advice and support to researchers and partners in the health medical sector with a focus on the ARDC's Health Studies Australia National Data Asset Program, aka HISANDA. And joining Rhys will be Natalie Coutry, who is a clinical project manager and a clinical research associate for the SAHMRI's Clinical Trials Platform that has extensive experience in the clinical trial sector, managing trials from start to finish across a number of areas. But for today, most importantly, Nat is here because she's managing the South Australian node for the HISANDA initiative and is obviously a member of the HTSA team. So over to you, Rhys.
Thank you. My knees objected to me standing up after having sitting down for that long. So I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to the Australian Research Data Commons and the HISANDA project. ARDC is one of about 23, I think, NCRIS funded facilities around the country, funded by a large amount of money from the Commonwealth Department of Education, not science or as you might think. Most NCRIS facilities are machines that go ping, large instruments and supercomputers. Australian Research Data Commons is around the data itself being the infrastructure. So we're one of only a couple of the NCRIS facilities which focuses on just the data. We do have machines that go ping. We run the Nectar Research Cloud, which is like AWS for researchers and free. We're a member-based organisation in terms of our governance, so we've got members which are universities and research institutes around the country, and we also have some host organisations. So I'm based with my 6 colleagues in Adelaide at the University of Adelaide, and we have people around the country in other institutions, but about 110 odd employees for ARDC. Really, the whole point of this is to provide researchers with competitive advantage, specifically by using their data as effectively as they possibly can, making sure that it's shared, stored, and analysed and created and retained as effectively as possible, which means a lot of work in partnership. Almost everything we do is in partnership. My director says, we do things that can't be done in one institution. If you come and ask us for partnering for money that your institution can do, we can't help. But if you want a national scale initiative that will benefit everybody or as many as possible, that's the sort of thing that we do. And we do it always in a co-invested environment. Research Data Commons then is really about bringing all those things together. It could be the skills that are needed, it could be some data capacity, particularly around cloud compute models, but particularly for the SAHMRI project, it's around consensus building, about best practice as well for research data. And I'll come back to that in a minute. And the way we've organised our activity is we have what we call our, we've got 3 data commons. There's a people one, a planet one, and a HASS and Indigenous one, humanities and social sciences, for those not familiar with HASS. Obviously, the people data commons is where this project belongs, and that's where I'm working. And really, I want to give you an overview of the other bits that the People RDC is doing, because there are a few things that fit into some of the stuff that people have talked about today. The first group of activities around data discovery. So there's a lot of stuff out there. How do you find it? Believe it or not, finding the data that's available, you would think is simple, but it's not simple. From multiple sources, how do you find the data you need to help you with your research? Secondly, how do you access it securely, making sure that you respect privacy and confidentiality? We've got a bunch of activities around that. We've got some activities which have come up in Michael's talk and others around sharing data across multiple sources. For example, a project that we have at the moment where you can use an OMOP model to join together data from a dozen potentially health services, leave the EMR records in place, ask a research question, get an answer without moving the data, that sort of stuff. And we do have an emerging program around AI and ML, again, just sort of in a federated way, advanced analytics, that's at an earlier stage. The HSANDA project fits into that first part. So HSANDA stands for Health Studies Australian National Data Asset, and we produced a product called HDA, Health Data Australia, which Natalie will talk about a bit more. The focus of this initiative is clinical trials. So investigator-initiated clinical trials. We've now got a program to look at the data for cohort studies, and we are going to move on to look at things like clinical quality registries when the government decides how they're going to manage them. And then we are looking at other data sets like AIHW and things generated by those other NCRIS facilities as well. Just so we be clear, and Natalie will talk about, but HDA is a catalogue of clinical trial data sets, not the trials themselves, which of course is ANZ CTR, but drawing data from ANZ CTR and from the trialists and from the nodes, creating a catalogue. The other things we're doing in this space, which I thought might be interested, we were involved in the Informed project, which CTIQ ran to produce a patient information and consent form, which includes wording and guidance around data sharing. People are starting to use that. The Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne now has a policy that every single clinical trial that comes for ethical approval must use that form, because that form specifically asks you to spell out what the conditions for data sharing are. If you don't do it up front, you can't share it later. As a progression of that, we're doing a project with CTIQ, Clinical Research Data Sharing Frameworks project, which is working with ethics committees and governance organisations. What's the best practice around how do you manage data sharing? always comes up. We can build the machine, we built the system. That's actually the easy part. The hardest part is the governance. So with CTIQ, we're starting to tick off some of those governance issues. And similarly, what's the other end? What are the situations in when secondary use of data would be the most effective way to do your research? Sometimes you've got to go and talk to the patients. I've read a number that said the cost of doing secondary research is about 20% of the cost of primary research, which makes sense. When is that appropriate? And the Product Health Data Australia, Natalie will talk about in more detail. But just to give you a sense of those other pillars before I hand over to Nat, trusted research environments are the next piece. Once you found the data, you realise you can use it, you get approval to use it, how do you transfer it to the new researcher? How do they use it in a secure way? You need a trusted research environment. Well, that's one way. And so we've got some of these that we're setting up, and we're working across Australia to build up a community of people. Trusted research environments are around. Not everybody has access to them. We're also in the process of creating a component of our Nectar Research Cloud, which is completely secure, meets all the ISO standards for secure, and that will be available for anybody to use. And finally, just to sort of paint you a picture of some of the other things, I mentioned the EMR integration model. So we've got a project which has now started. It's actually being led out of South Australia by UniSA. It involves people in Melbourne, West Australia, Tasmania, Canberra and Sydney, who all have different EMR systems. But using this model, we know we've done this with a smaller number, but you can ask questions across different health systems once you have that OMOP layer in the middle, that common data model layer. And we're also working on a set of data standards so that as we begin to add data types to Health Data Australia, it'll be really clear that we're going to add other ones. The one I'd really like to add is things like images and biospecimens. That's on the roadmap ultimately. In theory, we can do it now, but there's a lot of work that we would have to do to make sure that it's interoperable. And finally, we are starting on setting up some federated machine learning approaches. For example, on a pilot scale, we do have the ability to create an AI and send it out, rather than putting the data to it, send it out to where the data is, train the model without moving the data. Those kinds of things are the way that things will go, and then you don't have to worry about the integrity of the data, which is a big issue, obviously. I think that's enough from me just to give you, I've gone very quickly, but I wanted to give you a sense of the sorts of things that might be of interest that the ARDC is involved with. The main one, of course, and you can get in for more information, a plug for our newsletter, but obviously the one that's most relevant to this is the Health Data Australia project, so I'm going to hand over to Nat to talk about that.
Thanks, Reece. Good afternoon, everyone. So as Tom and Reece mentioned, I'm the project manager for the HASANDA project. HASANDA stands for Health Studies Australian Data Asset. This is a national program that's currently been implemented across Australia to enable access, sharing and reuse of clinical research data.
I did it.
Oh, did you?
I don't know why it's not working. Keep going.
Okay, so just a brief overview of HASANDA. It is a national initiative of the Australian Research Data Commons, ARDC, as Reece has currently discussed, and is supported by NCRIS. So why was HASANDA established? It was set up to build national infrastructure to allow researchers to access and share data from investigator-led and academic clinical trials, and more recently, cohort studies. There are 9 HASANDA nodes across Australia, and these nodes represent over 72 health research organisations. There is also 2 specialised nodes, which include cancer trials and mental health. Health Translation SA leads the South Australian statewide node. All of us nodes collaborate together on a shared framework because we are a national project. So what is the value of Asanda and why should we be promoting data sharing? There is so much value to this project and so many benefits. I've just listed the key benefits and values on this slide. So firstly, it enhances discoverability of existing health and medical research so that the data is easier to find. It reduces duplication and research waste, fosters new research collaborations and leverages existing data to answer any new research questions. It also improves health outcomes and maximises the return on investment from health research grants. There is an expectation that publicly funded research data should be made available in order to decrease research waste and maximise on the return on investment. So one of the core outputs of their Asanda project was developing an online data sharing platform. In 2023, Health Data Australia, commonly known as HDA, was launched. This is a national catalogue used to find and request research data. It enables primary researchers to register their data descriptions, we call this metadata as well, for discoverability. It allows secondary researchers to go into the website and browse the site and request access to any data output that the primary researcher is willing to share. The HDA only stores data set descriptions. There's no actual or raw data on this website, and this is important to ensure patient privacy is protected. So on this slide is an example of a clinical trial data set description on the HDA website. As you can see, you can request access to the data. It's just very easy, and this takes you to a form that the secondary user can complete. Also, in this data description, the primary researcher lists the type of data output that they're willing to share. It doesn't necessarily need to be individual participant data. It could be a data dictionary, a protocol, for example, or aggregated data. So all access requests are reviewed and approved or denied by the primary researchers, so they ultimately have the decision whether they'd like to share it or not, and they can approve access for data to be shared once governance requirements are met. There are strict ethical and legal governance frameworks that are in place to protect patient confidentiality. Again, primary researchers always maintain full control over their data sets and individual participant data. So in order to make Asanda successful right now, we need primary researchers to become data providers. So what does that mean? So to become a data provider, we are asking primary researchers to register their clinical trial data descriptions, their metadata on HDA. The data description, the clinical data trial description can come from any type of clinical trial, whether it's prospective or retrospective. The steps involved in this are not onerous, they're quite simple. So firstly, we ask the primary researcher to ensure that the study is registered and up to date in ANZ CTR and that the Section 11 data sharing statement is current. We ask the researcher to fill out a short red cap form, and that contains the metadata fields. The form then goes to a nominated academic institute that the primary researcher is affiliated with. For example, it could be SAHMRI, the University of Adelaide, or Flinders University. The combined information from the red cap form and the trial's ANZ CTR listing is then harvested into the HDA platform within 72 hours, so it's quite quick. Again, I want to emphasise that HDA only stores trial data descriptions and not actual or raw data. So to summarise, Asanda is all about facilitating access, sharing and reuse of clinical trial data. One of the primary goals is to accelerate scientific discovery by reusing and building upon existing data that's already been collected. The Health Data Australia is an online data sharing platform where data can be found and requested for secondary research. The primary researcher plays an important role by registering their data descriptions, so becoming data providers so that secondary research can go in and request access to this data. Again, primary researchers maintain full control over their data, and they ultimately decide who they would like to share it with, provided all governance requirements are met. Thank you so much for listening, and if there are any clinical trialists who would like to become data providers, my contact details are on a flyer on the table, or you can come and find me at SAHMRI. Thank you.
Thanks, Reece. Thanks, Nat. Again, please do reach out through the contact details that you've seen or through us. Talk to Nat, and rest assured, if you don't make contact with Nat, Nat will make contact with you, and we're coming to talk to you as soon as she can. Okay, we shall now power into our last and keynote, our closing keynote for today. It's my great honour to introduce and welcome Associate Professor Johan Vergens, a distinguished clinical researcher. Johan is a clinical imaging cardiologist at the Royal Adelaide, specialising in cardiac CT and MRI, and he's also the Deputy Director of the Australian Institute for Machine Learning and the AI platform leader at SAHMRI. Johan's research centres on cross-disciplinary translational research, specifically integrating machine learning and artificial intelligence into clinical medicine. He's got over 150 peer-reviewed papers, including work in prestigious journals and book chapters on AI in medicine. He's certainly recognised as a leader in his field, ranking in the top 1% of researchers globally. And he's trained and worked in the Netherlands and also in the US, including postdoc work at Mass General and Harvard. So an impressive CV, and certainly has a strong history of multidisciplinary leadership, collaborating with engineers, computer sciences, and AI specialists. So Johan's going to obviously be talking to us about the relationship and the future of AI and clinical trials. Welcome, Johan.
It's the one that was Thank you for inviting me to give the keynote and such a generous introduction. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so today, my title, I'm going to align more with the theme of the day than the title, because everybody in the room has been in clinical trial conferences and knows what companies want to sell them. Everything with AI and everything is automated and the patient experience is better, and there's multiple apps that get offered. So I don't want to list today all these things. I made slides, but I changed my plan because I just want to make you aware that AI is around the corner for everyone, for clinicians, for researchers, and it's going to change our working lives. But I also want to show how hard it is. It's really hard to deploy because my clinic is still the same. 15 years ago, I called people from the hallway. I walked through the hallway, put them in a chair, and I asked them how they're doing. It's only a little bit different that as a keyboard. No, the keyboard was there too 15 years ago, so not a lot of change. So I hope to, talk a little bit about that, but also to make you aware that everybody should start thinking of adopting it, and also realizing that AI is becoming easier to adopt and becoming more dependent on the end user. So the doctors in my case often, but also the clinical trialists and the people who actually use the software that is developed, and that is very important. So that's my background. I have a bit of a funny background in the sense, because I'm here at SAHMRI, where it all started for me, is my career has been molecular imaging and molecular biology, translating from mice to rabbits to pigs and to humans, so a lot of translational work. And my postdoc in Boston was, again, translating catheter work into vulnerable plaque detection, but there I met a guy who did digital biomarkers, and digital biomarkers were really, for me, something that is, that I thought was the future. So that's 10 years ago. I figured that we need, in the end, molecular and imaging and clinical data to come to the ultimate diagnostic or therapeutic or prediction tool. And that's why my journey started. And 10 years later, I moved to the Australian Institute for Machine Learning, after being facilitated here at SAHMRI as well, to expand my AI research beyond my basic imaging research. So this is not what I'm going to talk about, so not the role of generative AI in modern clinical trials, because I don't do a lot of work in this, and I can postulate a lot, and I have slides actually at the end of this, so I can happy to share them, because I spend time on them. But there's a lot of potential to use this. So I will go more high level, and then also show you what we're actually doing here, because that's also what all the presentations here. What are we doing that we actually can use? And I want to show you that we have done a lot of work, and there's actually some collaboration potential. So first, high level, why AI has not impacted healthcare yet, because we had the EMR in 2010. This is American data. And yeah, everybody was stimulated to adopt the EMR. And basically, what we saw is that everybody adopted it, but they realized that the administration burden actually increased. So the actual effect of an EMR on effectivity and efficiency was almost counterproductive. And also this whole administration thing that we have everywhere in Europe and Australia and US is really, we have a lot more admin people on the purple curve. And let's see. Yeah, you can see it. And this is the amount of clinicians growth. Again, a US number, but I think it's very similar. So we see that there's a lot of admin, but not a lot of more doctors. So somewhere we're doing some things not right. And a lot of studies have been done on how much admin tasks can be done. Now, 38% of clinicians of work can be done, spent on administrative tasks, which has to improve clearly, because this is just outrageous, especially knowing the headlines of the advertiser every week about ramping and the doctors and patients behind that. So what is key? And there's actually a very interesting book about productivity paradox. It's an old paradigm that basically that improvements in technology do not necessarily lead to improvements in productivity. And what you need is actually to reimagine the work itself. So in clinical care, but also clinical trials, we sometimes need to just reimagine things to really make a change from, for example, evidence-based medicine to personalized medicine. How many talks have we heard about personalized medicine? There's a lot, in between evidence-based medicine and personalized medicine. We're making some strides, but we're very stuck in the evidence-based medicine era because we're not reimagining the work to make trials more affordable. Why is AI different this time? The time to reach 100 million users for leading AI companies has decreased in basically 2 months by ChatGPT on the right. And from Google, Uber to ChatGPT, 2 months to reach 100 million users. So AI is really, all the leading companies in the world are AI companies, basically. And Australia can be part of that. Is it going fast? Yeah, this is a book from 2021. And basically it showed that arithmetic was easy to solve here on the top. The battery is a bit low, but was easy to reach, playing chess, recognizing faces, automated translation, solved after a lot of effort. This was 2021. And real progress was in driverless cars. And then what's nowhere near to be solved was automatically providing captions for pictures, understanding a story and answering questions about it, human-level automated translation, interpreting, writing into interesting story, interpreting art. They're already solved, right? So we thought they were nowhere to be solved by some expert, but so only human level general intelligence has not been solved yet. But there's a lot of talk about that. It's around the corner, depending on the definition you use. And all these language models, they excel at different tests. This is all the different law degrees and all the exams. And this is all just the blue is going to the right for all the new models, right? This is an old image. Basically, everything is now in the 80th or 90th percentile, including medical. And then in real life, what I really love is the concept of the secret cyborg. And the secret cyborg is that, people pass off generative AI work as their own. And this is a study of 1 year ago, and I think this number has already increased, that 64% have passed off generative AI work, and 41% would consider secretly using that generative AI to secure a work opportunity. So it's already here, and it has taken over just dramatically. And it's not only a bad thing, it can be a bad thing because you need to stimulate your brain, but there's a lot of stuff we do that can be automated in almost every job, right? Including my doctor's work. Are the doctors safe? Really difficult cases, AI is not going to solve that. Well, it's actually solving, a boy's disease who saw 17 doctors. It saved a dog's life on the left bottom, but it also it's solving the most difficult New England Journal cases already with high accuracy. So this is going really fast, right? And OpenAI, they kind of overestimated this one, but they say they have PhD level agents with GPT-5, and they got a lot of backlash on that. So, there's some people who say it's now going to plateau and we need different architecture to really reach that human level general intelligence. But this is a bit symbolic, right? If it's not happening this year or next year, it's going to happen. That's what I want to say with this. So AI in Australia, 50% of GPs have an A-scribe or intend to use it. I think the latest numbers is 25% already using it, ask permission, and it just works. It saves time, saves stress. It doesn't save a lot of time, but it saves a lot of eye contact and things like that. 10 minutes cannot become 8 minutes because they don't want it. So it doesn't save time, but I think there's a lot of less letter writing, for example, in my case, in private, not in public because we're not allowed to use that there. So then a bit of funny things. Has it reached research? This is a famous journal now because somebody put actually a ChatGPT language here in the front. Certainly, here's a possible introduction for your topic. And this was missed by reviewers and authors. So this is pretty terrible, and the authors are very happy to be so honored to be one of the first and reach news. So what about word frequency? This is computer science paper, so it's a lot of non-English speaking submitting authors, but the words, I can hardly see it, but showcasing, pivotal, realm, and intricate increased after the ChatGPT launch like this. So this is just a word increase, and you would say the reviewers don't do the same. Here, the words commendable, meticulous, and intricate have all increased after the launch of ChatGPT. So speaking of secret cyborgs. So AI is now a scientist also who's helping us doing science. And some people say that biomedical research is going to be disrupted by AI quicker than clinical because of the regulation and the responsibility part. But research is a little bit more liberal, especially the preclinical one. So this is really where it's going. And we see real world effects now and layoffs and white collar jobs. This is creative writing and editing jobs decreasing on the left, and also the pay decreasing on the right. This is 2 years old. And then you think, and then the doctors will stay a while. This is an act from this January where AI and machine learning can qualify as a practitioner eligible to prescribe drugs if authorized by the state and FDA. So this is a proposal, it's not approved, but it shows again how fast this is going. And a repeat script is often just a few buttons. So I agree that we should be able to automate this at some point. So in case you didn't notice, I think most people noticed, it's already here. There's potential for AI in scribe, admin, logistics, clinical trial, and please use the parallel clinical trial logistics as well. The use of agents. Agents are basically virtual agents that you can automate and tell something to do, order a pizza, book a flight, and things like that is already happening, and that can be more and more advanced. It outperformed physicians in certain diagnostic tasks, so it's not a question if AI will transform healthcare, but how and when, and clinical trials included. But importantly, it is a complementary partnership, right? Because the last picture I show in this presentation will show that it's not as easy as it looks. You think it's going to happen tomorrow. So if initially you think it's not going to happen, then you think it's happening tomorrow, but then it's still too complex. And health is definitely one of the later ones. And humans still have complex reasoning, communication, and care, right? Very important. And that is together better care. I truly believe in that. So then the third part is, how do you build an ecosystem? So it requires an army, an ecosystem, because you need to have everything from ideas to data annotation, to AI, to deployment infrastructure, as we saw in the speech before. And you also need implementation science, and you need the end users like you actually like it. You can have the best interface, the best AI, the best. If you don't like it, you won't use it, right? So there's all these people making these apps, especially in the clinical trial space, that nobody is using, right? So it's really a challenge to design it in the right way and going backwards, right? That's important. So you have to create a flywheel, and that's what we wanted to do. And I'm doing that now from the base from the Machine Learning Institute because I got a fellowship at the university to work with companies and to expand this whole flywheel from ideas to deployment. So you need several different factors: R&D, attracting, developing talent, infrastructure, and all these things. Because of time, I go through, but what do you need to do good R&D? You need to publish really high. You need to have high ranks because that's where Asia-Pacific students really come and apply for you. So one of the secrets of success is once you have high ranks, you can keep it because you get a lot of good talent. And that's one of the things. We have also had support to really do foundational deep methods AI, because that's the other element I think you need to do. If you want to be best, you need 5% or 10% improvements in performance if you want to win a product. We recently had a Combank, that Center for Foundational AI. We added 3 lines to their national foundation model, and we saved them 6 million. That was the foundation for the sending per year. 3 lines by a postdoc telling the cocky engineers of Combank that they could save some money. So there was like a lot of hours. It was a 28-hour model that became like 16 hours because of 3 lines of code. So that our best marketing tool to show that you can really have impact as long as you are with scale. So talking about that talent, nurturing the talent, partnerships, and really have ranks, right? So where do you publish in computer science? This is, number 1 is Nature and New England on 3. This is the Google H5 index. It's the 5-year index. And our home conference is CVPR, which is now 2nd, which shows, it's obviously apples and pears. Nature and New England is not the same, and CVPR as this is also not the same. But this is really where we, say, prove where we can, say that we are one of the best and you should come and work in Adelaide, not only because it's a nice city. Many projects ongoing. We do a lot with companies, but also with institutions. SAHMRI was the first institution where I joined AI postdoc, helping local projects. And we grew from 2 to 40 plus people in the building. It's now 200 plus in Frome and North Terrace down the road. We do things from neuroimaging, cancer response on the left top, cardiology on the mid top, endoscopy in the middle, endometriosis on the right top, orthopedics, and we work with any university, whoever is fun and has good data sets to collaborate with. My other second postdoc was a joint orthopedics postdoc as a cardiologist with Flinders, for example. So really trying to plant seeds to get all the specialties up. And also, we won the medical VQA competition, which was 3 years before ChatGPT came, basically talking to computers. I wrote grants. What if you talk to a computer and you get an answer? And we performed like 0.61, which is almost flipping a coin, but we won the competition from the NIH, which was very exciting at that time. So my group focuses on AI and methods in biology and imaging, and also the integration of this. But I'm also very passionate as a clinician to go to deployment, which I'll show you some examples. Infrastructure, we already heard in the past talk, is very important. We have in SA Health the largest connected public health system. We have SA Medical Imaging, huge imaging data set, which is hugely useful for many things, and also on a national level, highly regarded. Collaboration and partnerships is essential. And starting with SAHMRI, then with RA, then Flinders, and now we have projects, joint PhDs with SA Pathology. We have a clinical project with SA Pharmacy, and many more things happening. Then clinical trials. So we have done world's first clinical trial in chest pain. It was a cluster randomized trial in 12 hospitals, 6 AI assisted with a joint Siemens partnership to create a user interface to support clinicians whether people had a heart attack or not. And that has now been submitted to the 1-year follow-up to Nature Medicine. But imagine how much work that was, not only in the infrastructure base, but we have been able to pull that off in South Australia. Derek is now in Melbourne, but he still is bragging about South Australia, by the way, so about his access to data. So, and it was, the key was, I wanted to get funding from Siemens to collaborate, but I needed data sets. And that was Derek Chu, and that was the combination that was key. Data, AI expertise, and right time, right place. And that's how we got that partnership grant, by the way, which was in kind by Siemens and got this whole project going. So then there's another MRFF project. This is a 3 million automatic project as a pharmacy with Flinders, Digital Health Group, and we developed the AI to automate pharmacy review as a pharmacy, automatically recommending who needs to be seen first based on historic data, and then also annotating that again, whether that was the right thing, creating not only a data infrastructure that integrates my health record and as a pharmacy data, but also that automation all in one, which is really exciting because with the grant, we can actually go through the jungle of governance, which has been a challenge, but we're really close to going live, hopefully in late 2025. So this is how it looks, and this integrates and hopefully becomes a tab in EMR, and maybe gives us an entrance to become a bit more flexible than the current EMR. Don't tell them, that's a secret. We've developed a local Petri dish reader, agar plates that people look and smell. 7 years ago, we developed the first AI guided agar plate reader that basically excludes negative ones much quicker than the manual fashion. We did a bladder scanner, and we also have a real-time Medicare dashboard for mental health. We're doing with the latest photonics and AI, we do breath analysis. Speaking of CMML, which came back from Dan, we can actually look at cells that predict whether somebody's developing CMML. We can tell which part of the cell actually predicts that. And then excitingly, we now have, talking to the minister about developing a public AI scribe to really help, move the scribe and make it ethical and equitable and do proper research because there's a lot of scribes around, but it's a jungle and AI still hallucinates. So we try to make one that actually works and is affordable to SA Health. We're getting really close to, after a pilot, supported by Health Translation SA, by the way, and Hospital Research Foundation, this has become now a much bigger project. Automatic, as mentioned, and on the back of that, in the slipstream, I'm doing guideline adherence, automatic guidelines adherence assessment in cardiology. Who meets LDL guidelines post-PCI? I do one click of the button and I see who doesn't meet guidelines in my clinic. Because now I only see the patients who see me and I cannot screen my clinic because it's just too much work. How do you stay up to date? Yesterday night from 12:30 to 1:30, I had a meeting with the Global Alliance of these centers, talk about AI projects and how Sick Kids in Toronto has their enterprise AI set up, which is a little bit advanced for us, but you get ideas and you share problems and you connect easily to the Stanford leads with a question. And unexpectedly, we were nominated as AI Center Medicine in the year because we have everything in one building. AI methods and non-medical or medical people in one building, which elsewhere is usually health AI or something else. We developed an AI beer. I'm partially guilty to that. We also do fun stuff. We work a lot with companies, and as a part of our contract with government, we have engineers that help local SMEs develop AI projects. So, developing on your status, I think Bellberry is maybe not SME anymore, but we could develop AI together towards a MVP level that you can really assess whether it's something that is worthwhile. A whole separate talk, and I think you need to invite Melissa McCredden. Our collaboration with Whimsy Children's was 3 years. We had an AI advisory board, and we had a lot of different small projects, but in the end, the Hospital Research Foundation helped us recruit Melissa McCredden, who is really a leader in ethics frameworks, and who should come here to do the long talk on frameworks. So I left that slide out for today. But there's a lot to say and a lot of frameworks these days to follow if you want to do AI clinical trials. This is what companies like, one-stop shop. So yeah, this is really cool and also a unique opportunity to build real volume in research together with the research and companies who want to publish, who want to put you on a patent. I think it's the future of university research should do that more of a German model or triple helix model, or people call it. So coming back to this, seeing all these things come by, I think you should start having your own ideas of how you can improve, your daily work. Because the other thing is that, where AI was really hard and you always needed our group, there's a lot of on-the-shelf things now. I can actually put a prompt and build a website during this talk So there's a lot of easy stuff that you can already do by yourself, and you just have to learn and read a little bit about it, and we can help you with that. So I really, would love to do more in clinical trials and AI. I'm PI on 4 clinical trials in the cardiology group here. I also know how clinical trials work, but I just haven't had the time to really focus on that. And also expecting that industry does a lot, but we can do a lot in-house. I like to end with this one. So McDonald's get AI to handle a drive-through, but we think AI will replace clinicians tomorrow. Healthcare is a bit more complex. So it's a little bit hard, right? McDonald's would have automated that. Even a simple thing like ordering food is not always working, right? So this is, we're not there yet, but we need to get ready, and Australia needs to invest. But there's nobody in the room probably who decides that, but we need to invest more in AI to save biomedical research because a lot of other countries are really moving really fast. So that's also an urgent request, and reach out anytime to me, and I'm happy to help or divert you to the right person.
Thank you, Johan. Just keep you up there for a second. Okay, so we've got, that was fantastic, and just an enormous amount to consume, and I think like most people, I'm sort of equally mixed with excitement and equally petrified about the world out there at the moment. So I'm just going to check whether we've got any questions that people want to throw at Johan, or is it contemplation time more than question time? Is there anything online that's come through at all at the back there? Any questions? Jane's going to ask a question. Okay, Jane. Jane Rathjen.
Sure. So you've got an awful lot of projects there, Johan. Tell me, do people come to you with questions to be answered, or are these questions that you're answering from your own research? So, the company's coming to you saying, we believe AI could make this easier, or is it you saying, I believe AI could make this easier, or is it a mix?
I think it's a mix. Working with the big companies takes time, so they like ranking, they like nice people, and have a connection, and that's really what you build over the years. It took like 3-4 years to build these connections. And they like data sets, so they like to come up with their own ideas, and they give you the room to come up with yours, because most projects actually need your input to be successful. So I think it's a mix, but it's often driven by a business need. There's only a couple companies like GSK who really want to do basic research in ethics, or defense, or defense companies, they sometimes just tell us, just develop stuff. Initially, they were very guided, but they just like to contribute. Lockheed Martin is one of our partners as well. They're not less prescriptive. So it's a bit of a mix, and it depends on the companies. And Lockheed Martin apparently can miss it, especially in this age. But I think, working with big companies has been the most rewarding, but it takes time, and we really, we really need to show that we're speedy, as as Bellberry has been showing. But that is essential. You need to work. You need to show what you have on paper, and that's what we've been doing, and that's luckily expanding in most cases.
Yes, I've got a question over there. We'll just get a microphone. If you can just say who you are, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, Anna Semler from Digital Health. I thank you, Johan, for your whirlwind tour of AI and in SA. My question was about I'd like to know more about the challenges and opportunities of using data sets for large language, for LLMs, and the challenges and opportunities like, using patient data, and how my health record might be a better challenge or opportunity as opposed to the EMR?
I'll start with the last one. I think my health record is tricky because it's not for research, it's for primary use. So this selection of patients is really extracting data and then selecting them. It's not research. This is my order as a clinician. I want this group of patients. So my health record has potential for that, but there will be a lot of ethical issues around that. Taking a step back on the language models, I think we are able to control language models much better, and we can train them on data that they only know and confine them to that. And there's also a research group working on machine unlearning, so you can actually unlearn certain data sets from different cases. So there's a lot of new methods coming where there's potential to work with local small LLMs, SLMs as they sometimes call them, and develop them locally. And that's really one of my big focuses and part of my grant proposals to some of the NCRIS guys as well. So, we need to focus on foundation models because it can solve a lot of different problems at the same time for certain problems. Some problems just need that single model. So we still need, it needs time to do that quickly and easily. Then using patient data, I think there's a lot of just offline models these days. So I think with the Scribe, we can just locally use a local model, and we can do it within the walls of SA Health and start working there. Going outside the walls is much more debatable, and that's why the private Scribes so far have not worked, because we explored that initially. Why would we develop the thing ourselves? But that was just not possible to get them in or get the data out, because even if it's de-identified, it's not anonymous, right? If you have a story about a person, that's like a fingerprint. So I think it's really hard to defend that, no matter how much I want it to come now, because SA Health has difficulty recruiting people, young people, Allied Health, for example, who say, yeah, we don't want to work because you don't have a Scribe. Literally, I heard that. So it is symbolic how fast things are going, I think. And sorry for the shock and awe today, but we really need. Sometimes I'm more conservative, depends on the conference, but it's really important to start thinking about it. And the cool thing is actually it's becoming much, low code, even no code. You can just talk and create an app with your words these days. Look up Replit as a company that just creates an app based on your prompt.
Thank you. I think we do have.
Thank you, Sandra Heck from the Department of State Development. Just a quick question. Do you have advice on what are the low-hanging fruit? Like, what would you advise a private company or in the public system? What can I start with if I don't have the experience? And how much time do I need to put into it? Because it's hard, right? They're all busy. If I spend an hour a week, can I get an hour out in a month?
So you mean personal or a company wanting to develop AI?
No, I mean for a person working in the public system or a private company. I think it's really hard, particularly in clinical trials. It's really busy. There's a lot of priorities. So how do I put AI in, and how can I evaluate what is the ROI that comes out of it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, if you're driving your car, there's a lot of podcasts and YouTube that you can listen. That's how I upskill, and I sometimes have my cardiology car morning, and sometimes I have my AI morning, right? And yesterday it was a clinical trials and AI morning, right? So it's just to hear the latest, and you can do it in so many instances, I think, and social media doesn't teach you a lot, so you better just really learn stuff and upskill. And to be a self-declared digital literate, if you're a leader, it doesn't work anymore. So I'm joking about that, about some of our CEOs in Australia. They say, I'm a digital literate. It's not possible anymore, because it's just, you need to know the problems, the limitations, the potential, and know who to hire. You don't need to know everything, but you need to know the basics. And that is really important. And for boards, that's the same. So upskilling is really essential. But you can do it in your own time. There's some good courses to go underwater, to do for 1 to 2 weeks. And if you really want to change career, then you can do a 6-month one, depending on your affinity with that. But you don't need to be a coder to work with AI. That's one of my main messages today.
I've just got one last one as well, and then we'll let you go, which is probably is an argument that I have regularly with my son, who is an AI coder in a tech company in Lot 14. And just, I'm always intrigued about, you as a clinician, as a doctor, as a member of society, and when we talk about the fact that AI is here, let's face it, it's here. There's a lot of talk around regulation and regulatory frameworks catching up. The sort of juxtaposition between whether you feel regulation is an important thing that's going to have to somehow be worked out, even a bit after the fact, versus as a sort of, if you like, an AI evangelical who may see that as going to be counterproductive to seeing the benefits of AI in the long term.
Yeah. It's almost like Protestant and Catholics, but different, of course. But it's, if you want to follow all the rules, it's going to really be hard to deploy anything on our budget, right? If you want to, if you're not measuring, for example, ChatGPT got sued now, an OpenAI founder, by parents of a boy that committed suicide. I see some nodding. So, that is a perfect example, very sad example of one case that creates like over-regulation, right? And the problem is to counterbalance that, no matter how sad the case and how urgent it is to really regulate this, we know in mental health, there's a lot of suicide happening under the radar, right? So if you don't quantify this, we cannot counteract the over-regulation at this side. So that's the point I made yesterday in that international meeting, because we had that discussion. If we don't measure the unethical part of not using AI and not quantifying that, there's an issue of just going over one data breach and one thing, because no system is safe, right? We know no system is safe, but we need to start trying. And that's why I try to preach to SA Health, we need 10 projects to be one successful. And still, every time, it's normal, because the data custodians are also the innovators in some instances, and that you bite your own tail. So we really, in terms of governance, we need to separate certain roles. That is my governance advice in general, to really, that the people who are responsible should not be responsible for the innovation, no matter how tempting. And that's the problem again. They like to innovate. And I think that's one, by realizing this and self-admitting this is probably where you, and some leaders that actually want to take risk and understand and educate themselves properly that it needs to happen, otherwise it will happen to them.
Okay, thank you, Johan. Can everybody say thanks to Johan for the talk? Very thought-provoking indeed, incredibly thought-provoking. Thank you, Johan. Okay, and again, please, if there were further questions that's inspired or more information you require, just let us know. Either reply to the invite to today's meeting that Michelle sent out, or you can send us an email at Health Translation SA. So thank you for everyone for joining us here and online for today's Spring into Clinical Trials. We hope it has been some moments of inspiration and filled with some innovative ideas, valuable insights from our great speakers. And I'd just like to quickly say just a quick few words of thanks, certainly to our speakers, and thank you both for being here, and Michael for staying for the whole session, but all our speakers that have been here. And yes, okay, thank you. I'm just being prompted about an evaluation slide that I will tell you about in a second. Just also thank you to the organising team, particularly to Emma, without the voice, and to Alex and the team, HDSA team, and Michelle at the back there, and to our sponsors for today. That's the SAHMRI Clinical Trials Platform, Australian Teletrials Program, the SA Node, Bellberry Limited, and of course HDSA. So I'll put up the evaluation. Okay. Have we got to go? How many have we got to go through? There we go. There's the evaluation. Okay. I was struck when you said that you don't have time to do all the things you need to do. You want to get some AI to help you with that. Okay. So, look, in conclusion, in closing, I'd encourage you, hopefully, to take away some of the knowledge, some of the connections you've made today into your everyday work, and if you have time right now, there's still some tea that you can have if you're in the room to continue those conversations. And whether it's through,
new collaborations or fresh perspectives, let's continue to work together to really push the boundaries of what's possible in clinical trials to increase the safety and efficacy of treatments for our community. So, Natalia, thank you very much. Have a safe journey.